It is crazy to think there are only 2 weekends left of the 2025 college football regular season, and by this time of the year, we know which teams are good and which are bad. Today, I want to go through each and every conference in the FBS and talk about who the worst team is at this point. This video is pretty self-explanatory, as we're going to go through each conference and then talk about my pick for the worst team. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about the worst team in college football per conference. Okay, so when you take a look at the American Conference, currently the top teams are all a lot of fun, as you have Memphis, USF, East Carolina, North Texas, Tulane, and Navy, but the back half is pretty weak, as you have UAB, who is 1-5, and then Tulsa, who is 0-6. But there is one team that is substantially worse than everybody else, and that is the Charlotte 49ers. Despite having first-year head coach Tim Albin, who came over by way of Ohio, the 49ers have been awful this year. They lost in Week 1 and Week 2 to App State in North Carolina before they got their very first and only win of the season against Monmouth, who's having a good season at the FCS level. Since then, they lost to Rice, USF, Army, Temple, North Texas, East Carolina, and UTSA, and Charlotte has not been close in any of those games. The 49ers are absolutely awful, and in my opinion, the future is not very bright there. Grayson Loftus is the starting quarterback, and he's not been very good. Former UNC transfer Connor Harrell hasn't been great either, and there's just not much going for them. I know it's year one, but Charlotte in general is a losing program, and I think they'll be stuck at the bottom of the American for quite some time. Up next, we're going to go over to the ACC, and at the top of the standings, we currently have Georgia Tech, Virginia, Pitt, SMU, and Miami, as those are the 5 teams that are better than everybody else. Then there's a huge logjam in the middle, and then you have the poor Boston College Eagles. They are having the worst season in the ACC this year, and one of the worst seasons in school history in general. Boston College is under head coach Bill O'Brien, and he has not been able to get things going for them this year. After beating Fordham in Week 1, Boston College has now lost 10 straight games. They lost a heartbreaker in overtime to Michigan State, lost close games to Stanford and Cal, before then starting to fall apart, getting blown out by Pitt, blown out by Clemson, beat by UConn, and blown out by Notre Dame. The only game that they really played that's been all that close was a loss to Georgia Tech, as they were leading with just a few seconds remaining, but the Yellow Jackets kicked a game-winning field goal. Boston College has one final game left against the second worst team in the ACC in Syracuse, and the loser of that game will be crowned the champion as the worst team in the ACC. Boston College hasn't gotten a lot of production out of the quarterback position, as neither Dylan Lonergan or Grayson James have been able to get much going. And probably the best player on the team is Lewis Bond, who I think will go off to the NFL as a receiver. Boston College is struggling, and Bill O'Brien needs to go back to the drawing board. Going over to the Big 12, it is very top-heavy. You have Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, Houston, and Arizona State, who are all ranked, and then Cincinnati and Arizona have been solid. After that, you have a couple of decent bowl teams, and at the very bottom, you have 3 teams that are very bad. UCF is currently 1-6 in the conference, Colorado is also 1-6, and then you have the measly Oklahoma State Cowboys, who are currently 0-7 with a 1-9 mark overall. They are absolutely awful, as they ended up firing their longtime head coach Mike Gundy after a horrendous start. They got their lone win of the season against UT Martin, and after that, the blowouts began. They lost 69-3 against Oregon, 45-27 against Baylor, and also dropped one to Group of 5 Tulsa. That was bad. They got killed by Arizona, killed by Houston, killed by Cincinnati, shut out by Texas Tech, killed by Kansas, and then this past weekend, actually had a chance against Kansas State, but they couldn't pull it off. To finish out the year, Oklahoma State will play on the road against UCF, another team at the bottom of the conference, and then they'll face off with Iowa State. Oklahoma State has a good chance of going 1-11, with their only win coming against an FCS school. It has been a miserable year in Stillwater ever since Week 1 when they lost their starting quarterback House Heine. Zane Flores or Sam Jackson have not been able to get things going, and there's just not a whole lot of talent on this team. They need a new head coach who can switch things up right away, and I know some people are talking about Eric Morris going there, and I think that would be a good hire for them. The Big Ten is one of the most top-heavy conferences in football this year, as they have 5 legit teams in Indiana, Ohio State, USC, Oregon, and Michigan, and then a whole bunch of teams that are just whatever. Going towards the bottom of the conference, though, we have 5 teams that could qualify as being the worst. Maryland is currently 1-6 in conference play, Penn State is 1-6, Wisconsin is 1-6, and then you have Michigan State and Purdue. While Sparty is currently winless in the conference, the Boilermakers are the worst team overall, so we're going to go ahead and go with them. They have not been able to win a conference game in either the 2024 or 2025 seasons combined, and after beating Ball State 31-0 and Southern Illinois 34-17, it has been nothing but L's for the Boilermakers. They ended up losing to USC, got killed by Notre Dame, lost a competitive game against Illinois, and then had a late pick six to lose to Minnesota. The Northwestern game was tragic, the Rutgers game was an all-time mess-up by quarterback Ryan Brown, and then somehow they were competitive against Michigan. Ohio State beat them pretty badly, and then this past weekend, Ryan Walters got revenge, helping the Washington Huskies defense only allow Purdue to score 13 points. The Boilers are absolutely horrible this year, as they are currently 2-9, and their final game comes at home against number 2 Indiana. There's pretty much no way that the Boilers pull this off in the Oaken Bucket game, so Purdue will most likely go 2-10, which I guess is an improvement from last season, but year one under Barry Odom has not proved to be much different, and this could be the darkest period of Purdue football ever. Going over to Conference USA, there are honestly not many good teams. Western Kentucky is probably the best team at 8-2, and then you have 3 teams at 7-3 in Missouri State, Kennesaw, and Jacksonville State, which some of those are very shocking in my opinion. Then you have a bunch of teams that are just whatever. At the very bottom of the conference, though, you have 4 teams that are really bad, as New Mexico State is 1-5, UTEP is 1-5, and Sam Houston is 1-5. The Bearcats would have been the worst team in the conference had they not won 2 straight games, and that's why the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders get crowned as the worst team in the conference. I'm not sure who keeps thinking it's a great idea to hire Derek Mason as a head coach, but Middle Tennessee is paying the consequences for it. They ended up losing to FCS Austin Peay 34-14 at home in week 1, and we knew it was going to be a rough year after that. They then got killed by Wisconsin, beat by Marshall, beat by Kennesaw, and then lost a close one to Missouri State. They were also close against Delaware and Jacksonville State, but recently the games have been getting worse as they got blown out by FIU and Western Kentucky. Middle Tennessee's lone win came in a 1-point victory over Nevada, and to finish the year they'll play Sam Houston and New Mexico State, and those 2 teams are also in the bottom of the conference, so we will find out a lot in the next 2 weekends about who is actually the worst, but I think Middle Tennessee will end up losing both of them and limp to a 1-11 finish. Each and every year, the MAC is one of the most thrilling and competitive conferences in college football, and currently the Western Michigan Broncos sit atop of the conference with a 6-1 record. There are currently 3 teams with a 7-4 record overall, and there is a logjam in the middle of the conference. At the bottom, though, there are 2 teams that are worse than everybody else, and that is the Bowling Green Falcons at 1-6, and then the infamous UMass Minutemen. They are a recent addition to the MAC after being there about 15 years ago, and UMass is horrible. Under first-year head coach Joe Harasimiak, UMass has made no improvement as they got killed by Temple in week 1 and then lost to FCS Bryant in week 2. The blowouts continued on the road against Iowa and Mizzou, before then getting stomped at home by Western Michigan and losing to Kent State 42-6, who is usually the worst team in all of college football. It was a horrendous start to the season, and it's only getting worse. They lost to Buffalo, Central Michigan, Akron, Northern Illinois, and Ohio, and none of the games have been close, and to finish the year, they play the other worst team in the conference in Bowling Green in a winner-take-all showdown to who can be the worst team in the MAC and potentially in all of college football. Coach Harasimiak has a lot of work to do, and things have just not gone according to plan, as they don't even have a quarterback who's passed for over 1,000 yards at this point in the season. Heading over to the Mountain West, currently the San Diego State Aztecs sit atop of the conference with a 5-1 record, and then you have 5 teams with a 4-2 record in Hawaii, UNLV, New Mexico, Boise, and Fresno, and it's going to be an interesting and chaotic showdown there. At the bottom of the conference, though, there are 2 teams that are worse than everybody else, as you have the Colorado State Rams and the Nevada Wolfpack. My mind goes to Jay Norvell when I see that. Both Colorado State and Nevada have the same conference and overall records, so I guess we're to go ahead and talk about both of them. Colorado State has 2 wins on the year, as one somehow came against Fresno and the other came against Northern Colorado. And then for the Nevada Wolfpack, they have 2 wins, one coming against San Jose State and the other being Sacramento State. They honestly have pretty comparable resumes, so it's hard to pick which one is actually worse. Nevada has seemingly been a bit more competitive, so we're going to go ahead and say that Colorado State has been the worst team. The SEC has had a spectacular season as per usual, as they currently have 4 teams in the top 10 in Bama, Ole Miss, Georgia, and A&M, and then 5 more teams ranked behind that in Texas, Oklahoma, Vandy, Mizzou, and Tennessee. The bottom of the conference is pretty bad though, as Mississippi State and Auburn both have a 1-6 record, South Carolina has a 1-7 record, and then we have the worst team in the conference, and that is the Arkansas Razorbacks. They have the worst record, but they've actually been pretty competitive in a lot of their games. They lost by 1 score to Ole Miss, 1 point against Memphis, 3 against Tennessee, 3 against A&M, 9 against Auburn, 3 against Mississippi State, and 1 against LSU. In a conference that loves hypothetical wins, Arkansas could easily be a top 25 team right now if they just had 1 or 2 plays go their way in pretty much every game. It's been a rough year for the Razorbacks as they fire their head coach Sam Pittman, and to finish the year they play at Texas, who's ranked, and then finish at home in the Battle Line game against Mizzou. I don't expect Arkansas to win either of these games, meaning they will limp to a 2-10 record. That would be bad. Taylon Green is one of the best kept secrets in college football, who I think will blow up in the NFL draft, but besides that, it's been a forgettable year in Fayetteville. And last but not least, we get to the mighty Sun Belt Conference. There is one team that is by far better than anybody else, and that is the James Madison Dukes. Under head coach Bob Chesney, they are 7-0 and 9-1 overall, with their only loss coming on the road against Louisville. There's also some tough teams in Old Dominion and Southern Miss, but at the very bottom of the conference, we unfortunately have the Georgia State Panthers. It has been tough sledding for them over the last couple of seasons, and 2025 has been no different. After getting stomped by Ole Miss in Week 1, they would lose to Memphis in Week 2, before getting their only win of the season in Week 3 against Murray State. They have now lost 7 games in a row to Vanderbilt, JMU, App State, Georgia Southern, South Alabama, Coastal, and Marshall, and to finish the year they have 2 road games against Troy and Old Dominion, neither of which will be wins for them. Georgia State's probably going to end up going 1-11, and somehow one of their most competitive games comes against JMU, who has the potential of getting into the college football playoff. It's absurd. Georgia State will need to rebuild and reload for 2026, and hopefully they can get back to being a semi-competitive program. So yeah, today we talked about the worst team in each and every conference, and what do you think? Who is the worst team in each conference? What did I get right and wrong? And what topic should I do next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.